Hello, everyone, and welcome to this excellent episode of Radio Nikea here on 88.2 FM in the Capital Region and all along the Gold Coast, as always. I'm your host, Garrett, and we have an excellent hour of programming coming live to you. It'll be excellent. So we have a special guest on the show today, a former member of the military and a current member of the Warhawk Party. It's Carlyle Bruce-Angland, everyone. He'll be on the show in just a bit. But first I have to get to what the show is about, because it gets to the core of, well, something that's been bothering me for a while. You know, we've had a lot of callers on over the last few months going on about what's going on in the world, of course, this being a talk show. That's what we do. But, you know, you have people calling in about the border crisis in Karelia, between the Cerudo and the Karelians. You have people calling in, of course, about the never-ending problems in the UHR. I'm sorry, the former UHR, dating myself a bit. And, of course, you have people calling in about what's going on in your thesis, these sort of ongoing hot international topics. And I've come to realize a lot of people don't seem to know what they're talking about, to be blunt. And I'd like to address that, because this program is supposed to be about intelligent, informed talk. We believe in freedom of speech, so we like to have callers in to give their opinions, but it's difficult to provide both of those things if a lot of the callers don't know what the heck is going on. So, because of that, I've decided I'm going to spend at least a little bit of this show kind of giving a background, giving the context for what is going on, because at least with the three cases I provided, they're all interesting that they have a common sort of origin story, a common origin point, and that brings us to the war about 20 years ago. So, I wasn't exactly fighting in the war. I'm not that old yet, but I was born into it. I was born around the beginning of the war. I'm not going to give you exact dates, because no one likes to say how old they are. But, I think understanding the war and how that ended, and how it will help you provide some context to how we got here. So, for those who are not aware, the war ended in 1810. Officially, that's when the ceasefire was written. For those of you who are a little bit more into it, yes, technically it was 1811 when you had the Treaty of Cambria, and that ended the whole shebang, and they signed the official agreements. But the war ended in 1810. That's when people stopped killing each other, which is generally when we consider wars to end. And the war had two major impacts. So midway through the war, the Cerudo tried to make something called the Dominion. The Cerudo being, of course, the island nation across the sea that we have tended not to agree with historically. They tried to make something called the Dominion, something that would counter our continental alliance. This is what we used to call the group of allies that Austria had with, you know, various nations, the Karelians, the old UHR, North Gurkha, and there are some other small countries that no one really gives a bugger about. But we had this system of alliances, and the purpose of the Continental Alliance was to ensure there was always a big enough group of countries on the continent who would be willing to fight together, that there could never be a major war, because anyone who challenged any of those individual countries would have to face all of them at once, and of course would lose. The Cerudo tried to make the Dominion something that could counter that. They took advantage of the UHR collapsing and the gains in what was once Nordvest. That doesn't exist anymore. I would be surprised if anyone who remembered that country was there. They tried to make a alliance that could counter the Continental Alliance and hopefully drop some sort of peace deal on those borders. Needless to say, as soon as the war ended and the peace deal was signed, the Dominion fell apart. so turns warlords don't make good long-term allies, and, you know, the backwaters of what was Nordvest weren't exactly beneficial. They were more of a burden than a gain. So around 1812, 1813, the whole thing fell apart. Not good, though. The UHR, which was already teetering on brink of collapse, completely fell apart then. That's why you have all these progressing problems in the UHR today. You know, none of the individual states that made the United Hoffnung Republics have ever been able to recover. A lot of them have fallen into complete chaos. It's a straight up shit show over there, to be blunt, and pardon my French. As far as Ephesus, what's going on there? That also was tied to the war. The Shrudo and us had been fighting in Ephesus for almost 10 years. And you can imagine industrial scale war for 10 straight years in a country as small as Ephesus did not conduce well for the population of Ephesus. So the reason Ephesus is how it is, divided into 3 states, is because none of those states were no part of Ephesus was in any condition to be a country anymore. It was basically rubble. So the Shrudo and the Ossians sort of split it up on the current front line and made countries. And that's Ephesus right now. The old government is still there, hiding on their coastal retreat. They call it Dotha. It's pretty. I've been there. If you want excellent feta cheese, I highly suggest a trip to Dotha. Besides the point. But anyway, so what's going on in Ephesus all stems from this core. And of course, then we get to the current situation north of all this, in the far north actually, between the Shrudo and the Carelians. Now, when we saw in the peace deal, the Carelians did not like the peace deal. That's part of the reason the Continental Alliance fell apart. As I said, the Continental Alliance was our string of alliances we had to try and prevent a war with the Shrudo. The reason it fell apart after the war was because the Carelians did not like the peace deal. They wanted all of the north to themselves, the entire northern continent, the entire northern subcontinent. That would have made them massive. Like, I don't think people fully grasp how big a country that would be. It would literally take longer to traverse Karelia than it does for you to go from here to the Shrudo home islands. Like, that would be a massive country, is what I'm saying. They wanted all of that. The peace deal that we ended up agreeing to did not give them all of that. It gave the Shrudo a small portion of the north. It gave them the subsection of the north that is ethnically islander. Yeah, you know, islanders being Shrudo, Enshaw, Windway, all those ethnic groups. They got that portion of the. It's not very big, but that's what they got. And the Shrudo and the Karelians have never been pleased because it gives the Shrudo a permanent foothold, of course, on the continent. And the Karelians have basically spent the last 20 years trying to find a way to push the Shrudo off without actually going to war with them. And of course, every day it seems increasingly obvious they will have to go to war with them if they ever want it back. But we can talk to our special guest about his opinion on that issue later. So anyways, that's sort of what's been going on. And I hope having that context, we can avoid callers calling in, calling the Ephesians, you know, sandheads, or calling the people from the UHR barbarians, because really none of this is their fault. They're all victims of circumstances, sort of what I'm getting at. And while I don't think it's our fault, we certainly have some effect, and I think we can have some effect, some positive effect on moving that situation forward. I'm not saying I'm in favor of just imperialism. Not saying I'm not either. I try to be as neutral. I try to avoid painting myself into such corners, such titles as we used to use in the old days, but I think we can have some positive effects there. Anyways, enough of that. Enough of my boring droning on about politics and war and the military. Let's bring on some music. A great little tune from a band up from the university town of Folkdale. It's Fortunate Son. So yes, that was story about. I got the title messed up. I have a tendency to do this. That was Fortunate Son by Silent Partner. The band was not called Fortunate Son. Anyways, that's my opening rant and some music, because we got to mix it up. Everyone here is not a big policy junkie like I am. And my guest is as well. I at least hope he is. Carlyle Bruce-Angland here today in the studio. I would give him a big round of applause, but my manager is, of course, behind soundproof glass. Hello, manager. And I'm the only one in the sound room. And, well, of course, Bruce is with me, so not a big round of applause. I'm sorry, Bruce. Carlyle, I call you by the middle name. That's a cultural thing we do where I'm from. I'm sorry. But yes. Welcome to the show, a member of the Warhawk Party in the studio. I don't think anyone saw the day coming, but it's finally here.
Well, I'm glad it is. I think that the public, showing off the public nature of the party, I think that needs to be, I think it needs to be a lot more prevalent, given how there's a bit of division inside the party itself. There's been a bit of infighting between whether we should use the old patterns or the new patterns, and as you know, the old patterns, if you knew anything about the war, it relied strictly on strength in numbers. Even the uniforms, they were made to stand out and to impress the enemy, as one of my colleagues inside the War University said. And it's basically just been entirely about the idea that numbers equals victory. And from my experience, that has not been the case. And in my experience, it's not the overall strength of a military that is based on numbers and force. I think that the strength of a military comes down to the individual skill and training of soldiers, not as massive battle groups ranging from hundreds of men to thousands of men, but to individual soldiers. And that is the new pattern. The new pattern is to rely more on individual skill, so that they are more effective against higher numbers of enemies. Because if you've got a high number of enemies, that evens out to around about, let's say, 100 men relying on the old pattern. But you've got 10 men using the new pattern, which is more dedicated to skill and just the effectiveness of a single unit, of a single man. If you've got those two battling each other out, the skill of those 10 men will easily outmatch the brute force and simple, the simple fact that the only remarkable trait they have is the fact that they're just a bunch of blokes wielding guns. That's all. That's the only remarkable trait of the old pattern. And the old pattern is basically just giving somebody a nice flashing tunic, a rifle, a hat, and just saying, right, go and kill these people. That's the way I've seen the old pattern. The old pattern is largely ineffective. And from my experience, I think that the new pattern is going to be a lot more beneficial to us, because we don't need to spend so much money on. I mean, we're still spending the same amount of money as we would with the old pattern on an individual unit. It's just that it's being focused more on skill rather than brute force and weaponry. And as a result, this will mean that more money is open to us. Now, one of the things that I've heard is that people might say, well, shouldn't we be going back to using the air fortresses, or the air forti, as we called them during the pattern?
What is the official name for multiple air fortress? I don't know.
I've never known. They've never actually discussed it. They always refer to them individually. But I can see why, considering, well, recent events. But the overall idea is that because we're spending less money on the overall infantry forces, and because we're not spending as much money on them, we can now afford to build better versions of the air fortresses. And to a lot of members in the Warhawk Party, this comes across as being a yes and a no policy. A yes, because they're spending more money on a war machine that for its time was massively effective. But no, because it would mean that we'd have to cut back on the large-scale forces that we had in service during the old pattern. And it evens out at around about, 1.2 billion shiks per air fortress. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that could be solved. It could be used to solve the crisis up north. They've got a bit of poverty going on there. I know, because
a bit of poverty in Ross. A bit of poverty.
I say a bit of poverty. When I was on not peacekeeping, but whatever it is that they call it nowadays, this operation where you go into socially deprived areas, or economically deprived areas, and you basically help stabilize the local community. When we were there's people who don't even have a roof over their heads. The majority of the population of some of these urban centers are living quite literally out of cardboard boxes, and I would say that it's something. I would say that it's something that's very deeply saddening, but at the end of the day, there's better things that could be spent with the money that we'd be saving from disposing of the large-scale old pattern ways that we have in place right now. And another thing that's really just kind of cropped up, particularly to my ears, is the idea of women serving in the military. And to some people, that comes across as a bit strange. Particularly to me, I can't really see the effectiveness of a woman in a fight, because I've basically got this prejudice in me that I feel strictly that if there are social roles to be played out by each gender, and I do feel that women would not be effective in the military. But overall, I just think that if we are going to be using the new pattern, which is based strictly on skill rather than force in numbers and strength in numbers, I think that we should be disposing of the funds that could be used to be built the air fortresses. We don't need air fortresses. They're kind of a relic from the old wars. And I don't see any reason for still having them, as a matter of fact. I mean, as a deterrent, maybe. As a deterrent, I can see they'd be quite useful. They're quite intimidating beasts, as my instructors and lecturers called them. But I don't see any use for them as actual war-fighting machines. I don't see any use for them in the future, because war always changes. War will always change. And I feel that we need to adapt ourselves better for survivability in these circumstances. And I think that adapting are adopting the new pattern. Sorry, I've had a very busy morning. It took me 5 hours to get to the capital from my southern home. It's not ideal, the transport that I use, but
What are you using? Is it is you using bullet trains? You using the car? You're flying in? What? How do you get here?
I was originally meant to be flying in on I was meant to be flying in one of the airliners actually, but there was some sort of scare at the air terminal. Something about somebody using, not using, but somebody had been suspected of carrying a small handheld weapon, not a firearm, but some sort of hacking device that could apparently disable the security protocols for the airport. But I had to reschedule my entire visit, and as a result, I've been a bit late. I was hoping to be with you during the first part, so I could help better cover the war. But I only just arrived in the middle of that music break. I can't. I hope you'll forgive me, but that music, I can think of better music to relax to be honest. But anyway, the point is that given how we can solve. I mean, as I said, 1.2 billion shekels. That's a lot of money that we would be saving by disposing of the old destroyers. I mean, and the air fortresses. I mean, I mean, 1.2 billion.
That's a lot of that would definitely give me my dream vacation several times over.
I know it sounds like I'm trying to repeat everything because I can't come up with a better point, but you could solve so much more. You could solve so many more problems with that money than simply building another destroyer. I mean, or building another air fortress. I think it's important that we emphasize that this money and the money we're going to be saving and the new skill of our military that could be found by using the new pattern, we could better further and advance ourselves as a society and also as a military, because back in the war, as you said, pretty much everybody, tensions were high, and I feel that if we can better establish ourselves as having a modern, sophisticated, and much more importantly, an effective military, then we can better further ourselves as a society, as Arceans. And it does strike me that this is the only way forward, I feel. To advance ourselves as a society, we first need to evolve our military.
Well, you are a member of the Warhawk Party, so I would hope that would be the opinion.
Yeah. I'm unfortunately part of the minority that thinks that the new pattern is the way to go. Unfortunately, the new pattern seems to be an opinion that's not very much agreed on, because a lot of these people in the Warhawk Party, as of I may or may not have said, but a lot of the people in the Warhawk Party are not relics. It's unfair to call them that,
but they're definitely not in their prime anymore. You would say.
No, they come from an age when skill was not the kind of it wasn't the desirable trait that the military was looking for. The military was looking at the time for strength, not weakness, rather than skill. And skill is something that I feel we definitely need now, because you could have, and I speak as this from experience, you could have a soldier that is well built, quite burly, and he wouldn't last 5 minutes against a soldier that is extremely well skilled with a spoon. And I know this as a matter of fact, but the point is,
I imagine there are some fun stories from the college.
There's definitely a good number of stories I can entice you with, but I think we'll save those for a later date. But yeah, I think that adopting this new pattern with the military, I feel that will be greatly beneficial, not only to the military itself, but also to Arcia. Yeah. I mean, we need first to evolve our military before we can evolve ourselves, because every single problem, or seemingly every single problem we've had, has been solved with the military, or
Okay.
by further advancing the military's abilities. And I feel that
Okay.
this is going to be another case.
So we'll just take a break on that. I'm going to we'll just take a break, listen to some music, and then I'll bring up some of the interesting points. We'll get into some discussion about some of the things you said. A lot of things was said that could be addressed, and I think it's fair that we give them the time they deserve. But yes, we'll be back in a second. So first, this is not first. This is like ninth. So next we have some music. It's called What It Is. It's from a band. It's also we're not playing that. Producer, what are you doing? Giving you the same band twice in a row. This is unacceptable. We're gonna play some music straight out from Rolstef. Actually, this one. It's called Bat Vibes Rolling at 5. Here on Nikea Radio. Okay, it's not playing. That's weird. Oh, All right, so we're back. You can turn on your mic again, then. Thank you. Yes, it's radio technology. Still an iffy thing, even in this day and age. Anyways, so you being a politician and me being a member of the media in this fantastical new Republican age we live in, I sort of have to challenge you on some of the things you said. Don't take it personally.
No, it's part of my political occupation to be challenged. I think if I was going to be offended by, I think if I was going to be offended by a radio host challenging my opinion, I don't think I would have made it very far in the military or in the Warhawk Party. So hopefully this is going to be enjoyable. I think for the most part.
Good. So I think the one. We're a radio show in the capital. You know how the capital is. It's very progressive, very cosmopolitan. And I think the one thing that will definitely, besides all the very important financial numbers you were talking about, I think the one that certainly would perk up some ears with my audience would be the comment about women in the military. Just because women did compose a small part, they have for a while, just for historical reasons. For those who don't know, this is a very little known factual tidbit, but back during the Second Empire, so almost 1,000 years ago now, what the generals of the time would do is they would allow the soldiers to bring their wives with them on campaign, generally to avoid guys having sex with the local populace, I'll be honest, but that's what they did. And what they discovered during this is that if they trained the women to act as the camp guard for the campaigning soldiers when they went off the battle, they could actually send out the entire camp guard, and then whoever they were fighting would say, "Oh, the women, they're easy targets. We can just take the camp now and hold them hostage," and then the women would fight them off, and then the men would win the battle. And this sort of started a tradition of always having women in the military from that point forward, up into the war, when the army started allowing women to enter the mountaineering units, the sort of the scouting units and pathfinding units. And now there's, of course, a serious discussion of just opening up the whole shebang, because at that point they're already serving in some frontline roles. And of course, you can't beat around the bush, the elephant in the room. The entire, almost 70% of the Karelian army, one of the biggest armies in the world, is women. Almost 70% of their professional army, not including their, of course, their weekend warrior, whatever they call their militia units.
The reserve. I believe that's what they call them. I believe they call them reserve forces or something along those lines.
Yeah. So what do you say to someone who brings up those 2 points about women in the military? I know it's not traditionally us who has a lot of women in the military, but there's certainly countries that do, and Karelia's got a scary army, at least that's what some members of your party would say.
Well, I mean, I can see the effectiveness of them in the military based off Karelia's examples. I can see how effective they would be, especially given what you said about the Empire, how they used to be the guards for the camps and how they would fight off any possible enemy attackers. But then again, you're using an example from the Empire. And I don't need to remind us all I don't need to remind anybody of how bad that was. But even though it is a bit of I wouldn't argue that it's a controversial argument to draw, but I can definitely see why people might see it a bit dodgy. As I said, I'm not a fan of women serving in the military, but I would not say that I'm strictly against it. I wouldn't say that I would bar them out from all branches of the military. It's just that from personal experience, I've often found that they do not make the best kind of people to be motivated by. I don't think that they're a good, not social, but if you can see it from my perspective, say you don't get along well, it causes problems, especially with the as you said, the sexual talk. That can also cause frustrations. You've got a missus at home. You've just come from the college. You've got a missus at home waiting for you, but instead you have sexual urges. And as you said, that was one of the problems that the Empire had. They would allow soldiers to bring their wives with them to avoid any sexual confrontation with the locals. Now, you can see what that would have been a benefit then, but now that is just a complication. Not the sense of having soldiers bringing their wives with them, but having women serving in the military where it can be mixed. Now, there is not always a guarantee that a man and a woman who are in relations, there's not always a guarantee that a man and a woman, a man and a wife, will be placed into the same unit. But there is always going to be a guarantee that a man and a woman, regardless of whether or not they're man and wife or whether or not they've not even met, will be serving in the same unit. And that is where the problems are up, because you have sexual urges. I know I talk about the professionalism of the military, as if that applies to everybody, but it doesn't, because there have been examples where people not utilizing their sexual urges, but they take it out on each other. So sexual urges crop up. There just so happens to be a woman that also has these sexual urges, and that will cause problems for the soldiers later in their family life. And I know I say that as if it's a last resort kind of thing, but there's also the idea that mixing genders in the military doesn't often end well, because it can cause social problems, and the last thing you need on your hands when you're fighting a war is social problems with the people in your group, and that is something that you cannot afford to have in a military unit.
So, would you support the old system they had during the war, where the women were in separate units? They could exist, but they wouldn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would definitely support that. I mean, I wouldn't say that women aren't effective because they are women. That is definitely not the case. I'm not somebody who is a misogynist. I wouldn't say that women are inferior to men because in the respect of the military. I wouldn't say that women are inferior to men. Definitely not. I'm merely implying that from personal experience, mixing genders in training-based units is not always the best kind of setting, especially if you're training for a war, because social problems can crop up.
Okay.
And that is something that I've seen happen many times. Quite recently, actually, we had a non-social investigation, but on one of the camps that we had down south, it turned out that the husband of one of the soldiers, or the husband of another female soldier, was in a relationship with one of his commanding officers, who was a woman. And that's not something you see every day, especially a female commanding officer. Now, that is quite something. And this is coming from somebody who's of class where they are meant to show, or they're meant to demonstrate an ideal that other soldiers should follow. And what she was just demonstrating is that, yeah, it's fine to go and have sex with somebody behind your partner's back. That's what that officer was demonstrating. Okay. And that can result in very big social problems. As a matter of fact, that person, the wife and the husband, have now actually broken up. Both partners, both the officer and the soldier she had sex with, were in a relationship with other people, and as a result, those relationships have now shattered.
Yeah, that sounds like a fascinating radio show in the making. To remove it from the seriousness of the moment, that I could see that being an award-winning show.
Yeah.
So to get to the nitty-gritty number side of things, so you're not a fan of the big seven, the big air fortresses we have still hovering around?
No, definitely not. I think they're they symbolize not only because they're big, massive warships that look more intimidating than aspiring, but I feel personally that they symbolize the not the struggle, but the tough times we went through producing them. I
Mm.
mean, it took a lot of money. It took a lot of workers. One of my friend's ancestors, actually. Well, I say ancestor, but
It's only a generation or two back,
yeah,
maybe.
a generation or two back. One of my friends had actually lost his grandfather during an incident when he was actually an engineer. He was a deck operator for one of the air fortresses, but this was back when it was still being created.
Yeah.
I cannot remember which one it was, but
I think I heard about that. It was probably the Valiant. I remember reading about that one.
Yeah, I think it was the Valiant. Actually, he was helping out some of the engineers, but he was involved in an accident that ended up with him losing his own life. And this isn't just a one-off case. There were quite a lot of these instances, and to me, seeing those things flying about in the sky just symbolizes how stuck in our ways we are in terms of not just of our military, but of our society. And I feel that there is a need for evolution of this society, but I wouldn't say that it is something that should strictly become, utopian. There is no need for the military. There's no need for this and that, because
that would be a very weird position for a member of the War Party to have.
Yeah. I feel simply that right now we live in we live in something that, from my perspective, is a borderline totalitarian government. The military has an affair in almost everything. And I feel that we need to neglect the idea of being a part of this military, this military-founded society, and instead move towards being a military utopia. Something
utopia.
Yeah, something where the military is not controlling everything, but where the military is something that should be aspired to be. So
that's a very Sudfellian position to have, but you are from the south.
I am from the south, yeah. Well, that was what you're basically implying is that the geological place of birth somehow would later stem to political standpoints, but basically
calling me out. I see how it is.
Well, you're from the center, but you're from the central. I can easily tell that from your accent. But one of the things that I really found inspiring was a phrase that one of my old lecturers, that I'm pretty sure he was actually in the last war. He basically said that service would guarantee citizenship, and that basically the idea is that you aspire people to be a citizen. They're not born with citizenship. They are born simply with, they're born with rights, but they're not born with the, I guess you could say, not privileges, but the abilities that a citizen would have. And through serving in the military, through serving in any military branch, be it combatant or reserve or even just human resource management, there's a lot of people in there, especially considering the amount of traumatic incidents that have been going on, particularly in the north, because a lot of the people in the infantry cadre that I was a part of, they were actually from the north, because it seems that people from the north are desperate to get a job. And in that case, it also just happens to be in the military. But of course, when they leave the military, they've got little to nothing to go back to. They have got, if they leave now, they've got to go back to poverty again. And that is just that's basically just dropping all the extra, not the extra baggage, but basically just saying, I've done my part. Now I'm going to drop everything I knew, and I'm going to go back to the poverty, the impoverished life that I was leading before. And to me, that's not right. I feel that if they are serving in the military, and I feel that anybody serving in the man, woman, I feel that anybody serving, anybody that has served in the military should be granted citizenship and given, you know, depending on how long they've served and depending on how well they served, I feel that they should be rewarded for their service. And I can, what we have in position now as not a reward system, it's just basically saying, yeah, you did your part, here's a free something or other, and now be on your way. I don't feel that's rewarding enough. And the fact that we hand out citizenship to pretty much anybody born inside our borders is a bit, to me, it's disappointing, considering that we could utilize the idea of, military service to improve the social standards of our society. And I feel that
So quick question then. I don't know how into this issue you are, but it's something we have covered, at least. It's not very popular to cover this. But, we have a lot of people coming in from Oriska, I believe it's called. I can't believe I've covered this so many times. There's too many places with similar names on the same part of the map. I think if we were going to invade that country, and we did, if we're going to invade and occupy a country for 50 years, why didn't we change its name to I don't know, Onigubala, so we could remember what the hell it was? Opportunity lost, Arcia. Opportunity lost. So we have a lot of people coming in, of course, from there since we pulled out, and a lot of them were actually fought for us, not officially because it was a territory, so they weren't officially in our military. But a lot of them joined militias and actively helped our military in policing that region when we owned it, and now they're coming here. Do you think they should get citizenship? Because I know a lot of the members of your party don't feel they deserve citizenship and that they should go through the same processes as, say, a random person from Enshaw who just felt like setting up shop here.
No, I feel that people, if they fought on behalf of our country, which is something that has happened, in particular, one of the things that I was taught by my father was that if you fight for the betterment of other countries, if you fight for the betterment of Arcia, in particular, if you fight for the betterment of a country that you've never been to, you didn't even know existed, but you fought for it nonetheless, and you fought alongside its soldiers, that guarantees a spot among its citizens, more so than the people who simply come over here and scrounge off our welfare. And I think that is something that I should definitely make a point of, because they fight for us. They have fought for us in the war, and then they come here to see what our country is like, and instead of being greeted by welcome arms and a hero's welcome, they are greeted with nothing but, well, we're sorry, we don't have any housing for you. You fought a war for us. You gave up quite a lot of, you saw your friends die, you gave up quite a lot of the privileges you had in your old country. And now we're simply going to neglect what you had.
Yeah.
And okay. I feel personally that something like that is not exactly the kind of example we should be setting socially for our country. And
okay.
And to be honest, I think it's really just quite disrespectful to the people that have fought for us, for our betterment, to simply turn around and say, no, you're not getting any of the privileges that you should have been given because you fought for this country. Yes, you fought for this country, but no, we're not going to give it to you. We're going to spend it on useless relic warships. Yeah. And to me, that is just greatly
starting to sound like a member of one of the intellectual parties, man.
I do. It's my father was a big supporter of them. My father was quite a big supporter.
Okay.
But I just simply feel personally that, yes, I am a member of the Warhawk Party, but that is not an excuse for me to neglect my dedication to the people who have fought for this country, be it whether they are seen by birth or not. Ultimately, that the fact that they fought for us without even knowing that our country was in this state, but fighting for us nonetheless, is reason enough to guarantee them the citizenship that they deserve.
All right. I think we'll leave it on that. It was excellent having you on.
Thank you.
You've certainly, I would imagine, definitely at least changed the perspective people have of the Warhawk Party. It was quite great to have you. Certainly can't wait to have you back on again. Everyone, that was Carlyle Bruce-Angland from the Warhawk Party. We'll see you later, Carlyle.
Thank you very much. Betray status unum.
Good on you, sir. Good on you. Good. So, we'll take a. Do we have any more time? Do we have some more? It looks like we don't have any more time, folks. I'm sorry. I did want to get into the. I did want to get into a funny story I had found. But unfortunately, it looks like we're running a little bit tight. You know what? I don't care. Ignore the commercials. I'm going to make some people angry. Let's just get into the weirdest story of the week. So, crazy story. Enshaw, for those who don't know, crazy little island country. Like, it's balls to the walls weird. Some people know about Masson. It's our little city we have by Enshaw, just to the south. But Enshaw's the actual country. It's quite big. Of course, everyone's here who has actually heard about Enshaw. I'm pulling your legs. But anyways, Enshaw. There was a pig born there with 8 legs. What happened? How does that happen? Like the metalworks putting something weird in the water. Moral of the story: keep doing it, Enshaw, because that means more bacon for everybody. That's all I can say. It's pretty damn weird. Spider pig is weird, but think of the bacon. Think of the bacon. That's all I can say. Both, all forms of it. Anyways. So yes, as I said, we don't have a lot of time, so that's gonna have to be our show. I want to thank everyone for coming out and watching and sitting down with us. It was exciting. It was engaging. Carlyle was great. I couldn't have hoped for more. In fact, he went above and beyond expectations. It was a great experience to have him on, even though we don't always agree. But yeah, that was Radio Nikea. We'll see you soon. You can always message us. We're always open, always reading the fan letters. I do my best to respond. And of course, you can always message Carlyle. He's a representative of government, so I would hope he would respond to you. Yeah, I want to thank you all for watching. So, enough of being in character. That was the first Radio Nikea. That's sort of what the show is going to be like. Hopefully my accent wasn't too painful.
Hopefully
I want to... Pardon? Yeah. I want to thank Grizz for helping me get through that. He's on DeviantArt as the Mako Highlander. You should definitely go check him out. He's pretty cool. He has some ongoing stuff he's writing. It's pretty good. And of course, yeah, I don't got much to say. Like that's how I was hoping Radio Nikea would work. I'm just gonna quickly go through the comments on this, make sure I didn't miss anything that I should be mentioning. He's does whatever Spider Pig does. Yeah, I want to thank Pneumonica for being there and making the odd comment. It was pretty good. I like how you rustled his jimmies a bit with your opinions, your character's opinions. It was quite good. So yeah, I want to thank everyone for watching. If you have any suggestions, if you ever want to be on the show as a character, if you have a character in mind you'd like to play as on the show, just message me. I'm Ravajava on DeviantArt. I hope you would know that because you're watching this probably through my DeviantArt channel. If you have found it through other means, I'm impressed. I'm honestly impressed. If you have any suggestions for music, that would be helpful because I was just like going through like the Google's like free to play this set list. And I was like, what sounds kind of like period? I don't know, jazz. So yeah, if you have something, if you're like someone who does music and you want somewhere to promote it, even like, just send it to me. I'd appreciate it. But yeah, that's the show. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you. I hope to have one of these every first Saturday of the month. That's my goal. We're off to a good start, I think. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.